Thank you, Presiding Officer. I move the amendment in my name. The Scottish Government is absolutely committed to a just transition and ensuring we take workers with us on our journey to net zero. For the Scottish Government, the transition is both the outcome, a fairer, greener future for all, and the process that must be undertaken in partnership with those impacted by the transition to net zero. A just transition supports a net zero and climate resilient economy in a way that delivers fairness and tackles inequality and injustice. We will not do to the North East what Margaret Thatcher did to our mining and steel communities when people and places were callously discarded and jobs promised that were never delivered. The impact of that thoughtless deindustrialisation is still being felt decades on by communities that I represent in Airdrie and Shotts. The oil and gas sector, and particularly the skills, talent and experience in the North East, and must play a critical role in supporting the build-out of low-carbon technologies in Scotland. We cannot ignore the fact that there is a climate emergency, which is why we have been clear that unlimited extraction of fossil fuels is not consistent with Scotland's ambitious climate obligations, and our focus must now be on a planned and fair transition that leaves no one behind. That means simply stopping all future activity is wrong. That could threaten energy security while destroying the very skills we need to transition to the new low-carbon economy. Neither can we put our heads in the sand, as the Conservative Party seems determined to do, and behave as though the North Sea contains an endless supply of oil and gas that is cheap and easy to produce. Oil and gas workers know how challenging conditions are offshore, and energy companies know how rapidly it is maturing. It is irresponsible of the Conservative Party to suggest otherwise. Their approach risks the economic future of the North East, would expose us to higher energy prices and compromises our energy security. They don't want a transition. Instead, we as a party of government are acting responsibly. We are facing squarely up to the challenges and planning a managed transition that supports the workers and communities of the North East and all of Scotland, rather than the cliff edge that Gary Smith from the GMB described would result from Labour's plans for oil and gas. Scotland has the skills, talent and natural resources with which to become a global renewables powerhouse. Our draft energy strategy and just transition plan, published on the 10th of January, sets out our vision to achieve this: an energy system that delivers affordable, resilient and clean energy supplies. That will not only enhance our energy security through the use and development of our own resources, but means we generate enough cheap green electricity to power Scotland's economy and to export electricity to our neighbours, supporting jobs here in Scotland and decarbonising our ambitions of our partners. Yes, I'll give way.
Monica Lennon.
I'm grateful to understand the Government's current position on the Rosebank licence, which we know sits with the UK Government. Will the Rosebank licence, if approved, is that going to help or hinder the just transition we need? It's not a transition, it's a just transition for workers and communities. It's a pity that Liam Kerr wouldn't take the intervention, but I would love to get some clarity from the Scottish Government, because I did write to Humza Yousaf ahead of his meeting with the Prime Minister, and there was no response. Communities deserve better than that.
Cabinet Secretary.
We've said very clearly that any future exploration in oil and gas production in the North Sea needs to pass much more stringent climate compatibility tests. I think that is critically important. We've already said that the unlimited extraction of oil and gas in the North Sea is not compatible with our net zero targets. We've just finished consulting and we're currently deliberating over the responses that we've received to the energy strategy and just transition plan, which will set out a confirmation later this year in terms of our policy framework going forward. And that plan lays out over 150 actions, as well as consulting on further actions to help maximise a just transition to net zero for our communities, businesses and workers. We are already doing the hard work of supporting the just transition and ensuring it is not only just, but as swift as possible. The Scottish Government sees offshore wind as being one of the most important economic and net zero opportunities we have. Our operational, under construction, consented and in planning projects, together with the market ambitions expressed in ScotWind and in TOG leasing rounds, now sets our renewable electricity potential pipeline at over 40 gigawatts. This could produce enough electricity annually to power every home in Scotland for 17 years. In order to unlock, I'm really sorry, I'm running out of time, I'm sorry that it's such a short debate. In order to unlock all these potential developments, we must build on our robust offshore wind planning programme to address the challenges going forward. There is a clear need for significant new network investment to ensure that our infrastructure does not become a barrier to net zero. And while we welcome Ofgem's recent decision to accelerate the approval of strategic transmission infrastructure, the UK Government needs to take action to provide the right powers to the Scottish Government that will enable us to modernise the planning and consenting system for grid infrastructure. Unfortunately, in that regard, while we have the energy, we don't have the power. We expect, in terms of the supply chain coming through, we expect the ScotWind developers to invest an average of £1.4 billion in Scotland per project into our economy across the 20 offshore wind projects. We need to support our offshore wind developers as they meet their supply chain commitments. All of the... I don't know if
the
I've
Minister
got time.
must conclude.
I'm very sorry that the debate is so short and we have such a small amount of time in order to debate these issues, because I had much more that I wanted to say, not least in response to what came through from the Conservative Party. So to conclude, the rhetoric over recent weeks has demonstrated that it appears the Tories appear not to want a transition, and Keir Starmer's Labour Party appears not to want a just transition.
Thank
the Tories
you, Minister.
have no regard for the planet. Labour have no regard for the workers.
I am
and
asking
this
you
SNP
to conclude,
government
Minister, so
will continue
please
to plot a
resume
path to net
your
zero
seat.
and do
Thank
so
you.
with a just transition.
I now